Hi, I'm Micah Halpern. Thank you for joining me today as I do some thinking out loud. Our first segment is called Background Briefing. We live in the era of revenge of the nerds. While there are still conventional battles being waged in many parts of the world, rockets and missiles are not yet passé. The real heroes in the current state of war, and certainly in the wars the world will wage in the future, are nerds. Only now we call them techies. Once upon a time, the highest echelon one could aspire to in the IDF, in Sahel and the Israel Defense Forces, was pilot. But today, being a pilot is good, but not the best. Being a part of the IDF's cyber division is where young men and women aspire to attain. Being part of the cyber division is now the greatest honor. I don't mean drone operators who play sophisticated computer games with real toys that are located thousands of miles away from where they sit. They push buttons and they blow up their target. I'm speaking about the techies who create the drones, who write the programs that make them deadly, who spy on the world. The top 5 countries with armies that excel at hacking are, in order, Israel, the United States, Russia, Iran, and China. 10 years ago, Iran was not even on the list. Today, they're number 4. Of course, this list is by no means official, but ranked by sources in the tech community who requested anonymity. But it is probably very accurate. There are 2 different types of hackers. There are the official governmental hackers. They're military hackers backed by hundreds of millions of defense budget dollars. And there are non-official, non-governmental hackers, fly by the seat of their pants, brilliant, creative high school and college kids, and recluse types, working behind closed doors, the doors of their dormitories or their homes. And it is from the informal, unsanctioned, often illicit group that the military finds their elite cyber soldiers. So why hack? Cyber weapons are now as integral to our future survival as are nuclear and biological weapons. The more complex answer is that cyber weaponry is cleaner, less bloody, more precise as a weapon. It can be used as a tool to spy and as a tool to attack. And most importantly, it is a tool of defense. The thinking of the military leaders goes something like this. If other governments are hacking, we need to hack better. We need to hack the hackers, or at least to fend off the hackers, or to find the hack when it happens before it's too late, and the viruses that are unleashed into our systems do their diabolical deeds. Some cyber weapons, certain viruses, have gained prominence in the recent years. They are equivalent to the F-15 fighter jets, only cyber style. Their names are Stuxnet, Viper, Flame, Dooku, which is Dooku 1, and Dooku 2.0. They are all highly sophisticated viruses. Nobody has yet defined the point of entry and the authorship of these viruses. We can only speculate. These viruses are written in machine language, composed of a series of numbers and shapes. Machine language is a language that only the computer understands. It dictates to the CPU, the computer processing unit, giving commands, telling it what to do. One computer speaking to another computer in a language only computers can understand. In machine language, for instance, all hyphens are not the same. Each is a different length and width. Differences that are tiny. Every stroke is a different instruction. The different kinds of commas and different kinds of periods tell the story. The computer sees the difference. We need a magnifying glass to recognize the difference. According to Clear Sky, a very impressive cybersecurity research group, Iran infected Israel with a cyber virus almost a year ago. Clear Sky announced that a notorious Iranian hacker group, a team called Ajax Group, hit 40 Israeli targets, including military and computers and security computers. They were able to access the information on these presumably highly secure computers containing very sensitive information and the emails that were sent to and from them. Included in these 40 targets were a number of important scholars and academics whose research is very important to Israel's national security. The hackers presented themselves as journalists and asked for interviews with people whose computer programs were of interest to them. They even created actual websites and news sites to establish their bona fides. The hackers' elaborate front to dupe the officials and the academics to lower their defenses worked. In this case, lowering their defense meant opening an attachment sent to them by the fake journalists about their interview. In essence, the Iranian Ajax team was actually invited into the inner sanctum of Israeli thought and defense. Ajax exploited the great weakness of many of Israelis, their egos. In the traditional military battle, it was the equivalent of a head-on attack with no flanking. The report said the following, quote, "Several characteristics of the attacks have led us to the conclusion that an Iranian threat actor is the likely culprit. We assume, though do not have direct evidence, that it is being supported by the Iranian regime or performed by the regime itself," unquote. The Clear Sky report continued, "While very successful in their attacks, the attackers are clearly not technically sophisticated. They are not new to hacking, but do make various mistakes, such as grammatical errors, exposure of the attack infrastructure, easy to bypass anti-analysis techniques, lack of code obfuscation, and more," unquote. In other words, these hacks were good, but not great. That was a year ago, eons in the computer age. Recently, the Wall Street Journal is reporting that a computer virus infected 3 hotels in Lausanne, Switzerland. Lausanne, by the way, is where the nuclear talks with Iran have been taking place. The report has set off a maelstrom throughout Europe, the Middle East, and here at home. The source for this information is Kaspersky. Kaspersky is one of the world's biggest antivirus companies. Kaspersky found out about this virus because they themselves were hacked. The virus is called Duku 2.0. It does not do damage. It is an advanced version of the Duku virus of 2011, which attacked Iran and is very similar to the Stuxnet virus of 2009-2010. The original Stuxnet successfully destroyed thousands of Iranian nuclear centrifuges. Wired magazine and the New York Times have asserted that Stuxnet was a joint creation of Israel and the United States. From the point of view of resources, that makes sense. On home and work computers, malware and worms slow down our systems. We know that they're there. Not so with this kind of spyware. Stuxnet, for example, was housed in the BIOS. No one ever looks in the BIOS. Most of us don't even know what the BIOS is, let alone know where to look. Certainly your antivirus programs don't work on that. Duku and Stuxnet are not the only major worms and warriors that are out there today. Only the 2 most glaring and talked about right now. There are also 2 others, very similar and extremely powerful worms that have been launched. There has been no press coverage of these worms practically at all. They are Viper, which came out in 2012, and Flame, which came out in 2013. Kaspersky has said, let's say for instance, that computer spyware programs as sophisticated and stealth as these can only be the product of a country dedicated to cyber warfare. The company asserts that at least 5,000 programmers were at work designing these cyber weapons. Interestingly, Israel and the Palestinian Authority have also been hit. Kaspersky says that they found the spyware Flame inserted into both Israeli and PA computer systems. This brings the number of Stuxnet-type viruses to at least 5, if not 6, that I can count. The newly discovered Duku 2.0 uses the computer as a relay, much like the others did, but it's far better. It can watch and hear everything going on in the room and everything that is on your computer. It can see and send to its own home base. The computer's activation light, let's say for instance for the microphone or the camera, is disabled by Dooku. The virus takes over the entire computer and no one even knows it's there. There are only a few companies in the entire world, notice governments, that have the tools to even detect this virus. If the code is written well, no one can even know that the spyware was there. It even eliminates its point of entry, making it impossible to find computer patient number 0, the very first computer that was infected by the virus. Both the Wall Street Journal and Kaspersky imply that Israel is behind the spying in Lausanne. The Wall Street Journal put it this way: Dooku 2.0 was, quote, a virus widely believed to be used by Israeli spies, unquote. And in their report, Kaspersky referred to Dooku 2.0 as Dooku Bet. Bet is the second letter of the Hebrew language. All letters in Hebrew are assigned a numerical value, and the numerical value of Bet is 2. They are clearly hinting that Israel is behind the hack, but there is no tangible evidence. Tzipi Hotovely, Israel's deputy foreign minister, the person who is now effectively the foreign minister, addressed this innuendo during an interview on Israeli army radio. She said, quote, the international reports of Israeli involvement in the matter are baseless, unquote. She said that this is a waste of time and the main issue is to prevent a bad deal from being signed between Iran and the P5+1. The Dooku 2.0 was also found on computers of representatives attending the 70th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. Why there? Why those computers? Because in attendance at the event were dozens of heads of state, foreign ministers, diplomats and power brokers, advisors, and actually several of the people involved in the negotiations with Iran were there. It was the perfect place to infect the phones and computers of anyone you want to spy on. The Swiss are investigating. The Austrians are investigating because some of the talks took place in Vienna. The United States has said that they are aware of the threat and that they are always careful, and more than that, they will not comment. One thing is for certain, this is not the work of a lone hacker or talented high school kid. This attack bears all the markings of a highly complex worm that cannot be found. This kind of computer spyware is created by countries. They're called APTs, Advanced Persistent Threats. They're the most sophisticated and complicated and stealth of all computer threats out there. By the time they are discovered, APTs have already done their harm. And most of the time, most of them go undetected. They do their job, and then they go dormant. Kaput. All done. Goodbye. Until the next time. Coming up next, Points of View. Here's what some important voices have been talking about. Every serious journal, paper, website, media outlet, including TV and radio, have spent time talking about this subject. So now it's our turn. And honestly, it's a worthy topic, and we will probably revisit it because the dust has yet to settle on the subject. I'm speaking about Michael Oren's newest book, Ally: My Journey Across the American-Israeli Divide. Oren is the former Israeli ambassador to the United States. He served from 2009 to 2013. A graduate of Columbia University and Princeton, a great historian. Michael is an academic, and he's most comfortable in the think tank. It was at the conservative think tank in Jerusalem named Shalem, where he hung his hat for many, many years. Now that his diplomatic career is over, he's in the Israeli Knesset, the Israeli parliament. He ran on the Kulanu list. The Kulanu party is an economic party where their platform was exclusively economically based, especially dealing with the issue of affordable housing. The party is a breakoff of the Likud and Bibi. This is interesting because Oren left Bibi and the Likud. One could argue, actually I would argue, that Oren was never really a part of the Likud. He was appointed ambassador because he was a great candidate. He was not an insider. That actually caused some issues. The current ambassador, Ron Dermer, was and is the insider. Oren knew this from the outset. He was not going to be policy advising. He would not be part of the inner circle, and his input would be received, but not solicited, and certainly not frequently. This is the way things break down in politics. But Michael's book about his time in D.C. should be taken seriously, and his columns that he has written to drum up support and readers need to be addressed. So Michael does not make things up. He might not know all the details, and his interpretation may be skewed, but he's truthful. I want to discuss two different columns about Oren and his thesis. First up is a column by Nahum Barnea. It was published in Yediot on Ynet on June 23, 2015. Barnea, as he's called, is the senior diplomatic columnist of Israel. He is a gifted writer with a great amount of insight. Barnea is always important to read. His columns influence policy and give perspective. He has contacts and access everywhere, and that really helps his work. This piece is called Michael Oren's Baseless Anti-Obama Articles. He begins by saying, Oren is a great historian, and he has really contributed to the field and the understanding of Israel through his work. But Barnea calls Oren to task on two articles he wrote that attract attention to his newest book, Ally. One column is in the Wall Street Journal, the other in Foreign Policy magazine. Barnea says that Oren portrays Obama as a person who has been mentally taken hostage by Islam. And he then quotes the piece. Quote, I could imagine how a child raised by a Christian mother might see himself as a natural bridge between her two Muslim husbands, Oren wrote. Quote, and he continues, I could also speculate how that child's abandonment by those men could lead him many years later to seek to accept their co-religionists, unquote. Barnea then explains, what Oren writes beyond that doesn't hold water. The psychological descriptions of the mental affiliation of Obama developed to Islam as a child could have just as easily described an opposite Obama policy. The argument that all Netanyahu's errors stem from good faith and that all Obama's errors are intentional is not in line with the facts. Oren should know that, unquote. And now Barnea reveals to us that Oren, while in D.C., was really an outsider, relegated to dealing with the Democrats, while Dermer and Netanyahu dealt with the Republican billionaires. Quote, Oren was an ambassador to Washington in 2009-2013. Netanyahu, who appointed him, preferred to work through his protege, Ron Dermer. Oren was disconnected. He wasn't part of the conspiracy between Netanyahu and Dermer and the Republican billionaires, a conspiracy which contributed greatly to the crisis that was created. He wasn't part of the outrageous welcome that Mitt Romney, Obama's rival, received in Jerusalem. On the contrary, while Netanyahu struck deals with Republicans, Oren was ordered to nurture the relationship with the Democrats. Barnea then explains that Oren is wrong and that he has missed and misread the scene entirely. Quote, his articles are baseless, not only on the factual side, they are baseless in understanding history. They present the U.S. and Israel as two countries with equal standing, identical twins, which work in agreement and share all their secrets with each other. Any change in this intimate relationship is an abandonment, a betrayal. Here is how Barnea ends his piece. Obama believed that distancing himself somewhat from Israel's policy while boosting the security aid and continuing the diplomatic support would allow him to achieve the peace he and Israel had been hoping for. He was wrong, of course. Netanyahu had different plans. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas had different plans. The responsibility for the failure is divided between the three of them. We, as Israelis, should demand responsibility first of all from our Prime Minister. All the rest, including the childhood dreams about the Muslim father, is fiction. It befits a preacher in an evangelical church, not a renowned historian. The end. That's it. Barnea's critique is valid, but too sharp. Oren is not so off base because Obama was wrong, and that endangered Israel. The second column is by David Suissa and was published in the LA Jewish Journal. He's the president of the LA Jewish Journal and writes a weekly column there. His love is storytelling and story collecting. Professionally, he's an advertising executive. Suissa's column is called Torn Between Two Loves. It was published on June 17, 2015 in the LA Jewish Journal. Suissa's piece is really a book review and is very positive. It focuses on the tension of dual loyalty and the difficulty of trying to balance Oren's love of both Israel and the United States. Suissa writes, that theme is dual loyalty. In modern parlance, dual loyalty is usually used as a pejorative, an accusation that an American Jew may feel more loyalty to Israel than the United States. The astonishing thing about Oren's book is that he has, to a certain extent, redeemed the term. The dual loyalty the reader feels an ally is not tinged by the poison of betrayal. Rather, it is imbued with a sense of generosity, a sense that an American with an Israeli passport can genuinely love both countries deeply, even when those countries quarrel. Loyalty is a charged term because it implies one must choose, and Oren certainly chooses Israel the minute he gives up his U.S. passport, as is required by law to become a foreign envoy. But it is a wrenching moment for him, as he believes in that U.S. passport, in the history it symbolized, in the values it proclaimed. Oren is aware of the nation's darker legacies, but that does not make him less sentimental about America. My eyes still misted during the national anthem, brightened at the sight of the Manhattan skyline, and marveled at the Rockies from 35,000 feet. Suissa, an obvious fan of Michael Oren, has his book, finished his essay this way. This may help to explain how Oren was able to navigate the sharp conflicts between the two countries he so loves. He didn't see the relationship as a one-way street. He saw America's value to Israel, yes, but he also saw Israel's value to America. As a historian, too, Oren understands that leaders come and go, that no leader, however powerful, is bigger than a country or its ideals. Leaders may damage relationships and interests, but they don't damage values. Oren was deeply loyal to his beloved Israel, but he was also deeply loyal to the enduring values of his beloved America. That's how he gave dual loyalty a good name. In other words, despite the conflict between the leaders, the values and the history of each country is what bind them together. Coming up, commentary through cartoons, where pictures tell the story. There are two cartoons that I want to discuss today. Both comment on the very same theme. Does the U.S. have a strategy on ISIS? The first is a cartoon published on Tuesday, June 9th in the Miami Herald. It is drawn by Jim Morin. Morin is a cartoonist for the Miami Herald. He has been there since '78. He won the Pulitzer in '83. This cartoon has two panels, one on top of the other. The top panel has ISIS on the march. 5 ISIS members are marching with weapons and an ISIS flag. The caption reads, "The March," in blood red. And the flag says ISIL and has a skull and bones on it. The lower panel shows President Obama walking to the lectern, a speech in hand, presumably at a press conference. In his hand is a paper which reads, quote, "Another change in strategy versus ISIS and Iraq." This is a damning critique. The basic idea is that ISIS is moving and marching and conquering while the U.S. is just speaking. All the marching the U.S. is doing is going back and forth to the lectern and to press conferences. The second cartoon is very similar. It was drawn by Glenn McCoy. It was published as part of the KegelCartoons.com. President Obama is at his desk with a red phone, and an advisor is saying, "Sir, the Iraqi army has fled, leaving ISIS to take thousands of U.S. artillery, armored vehicles, and tanks. What should we do?" Obama answers, "First thing is to no longer honor the warranties," unquote. This is a very sad state of affairs. McCoy is saying that the president is out of touch. He's not confronting ISIS. He's not dealing with the essential points, but is focusing on marginal issues. In a moment, my own perspective and a few predictions. The FIVB, which is the International Federation of Volleyball, held a competition in Tehran, Iran recently. Iran defeated the United States in 3 sets of volleyball. The scores were 25-19, 29-27, and 25-20. Participation in this competition demonstrates a significant change in U.S. policy. It signals the thawing of relations and the end of sanctions. One of the most obvious and easy to comply dimensions of sanctions is involvement or absence thereof of international sports. In this case, not only is Iran involved, they're hosting, and the United States is participating in the volleyball championship in Tehran, Iran, much as they would were it held almost anywhere else in the world. I'm not shocked by this. Actually, it was to be expected. The only unrealized issue is, what will this lead to? The obvious answer is normalization of diplomatic relations. Bringing Iran in out of the doghouse, that's the goal. This is one of the objectives of international sports. The idea is that conflicts are about politics and leaders, while sports are about people. Athletes are supposed to put politics aside and deal only with the sport and the competition. Sometimes that's harder to do than at others. This is one of those times. Next, Amazon had a very embarrassing moment recently. They were selling ISIS propaganda magazine for $12 a pop. How would they know? The magazine is a glossy production called Dabik, and this was its 9th issue. It's produced in 5 different languages, in English, German, French, Spanish, and Arabic. As soon as Amazon found out, they pulled the product. But Dabik is a town in Syria. It's the equivalent of the city of Megiddo. It's where the cataclysm will take place in Islam. But this is the most interesting part. ISIS did not need Amazon in order to reach thousands and thousands of readers with their magazine. Dabik is an online publication also. Amazon just made it easier to buy the glossy cover. ISIS is selling the magazine throughout the web, and it's giving it out for free in a lot of places. This latest issue of Dabik is dedicated to explaining why and how young women become sex slaves. There are also 2 very long articles explaining ISIS. The point is that these women would not be sex slaves if only they converted and accepted the ISIS point of view and stance on Islam. The articles are written by women. That is part of ISIS propaganda. ISIS is justifying the denigration of women and hoping to recruit women all at the same time. Now you know what I've been thinking. Tell me what you're thinking. Email me at micah@jbstv.org. Tweet me at Micah Halpern. Tell me what you think. Before we end, let me leave you with one piquante piece of information. We've been talking a lot about computers. The very first mainframe computer in Israel was called the Golem. It was at the Weizmann Institute in Rehovot. It was a huge, huge thing, one of the most sophisticated in the world. It was called the Golem for a reason. It was named after the mystical, magical creature built in the Middle Ages in Prague by the great rabbi of Prague, the Maharal of Prague. Its purpose was to protect the Jews of the city. According to tradition, the Golem was fashioned by the Maharal in the Altneu Shul in his study, and the secret name of God was placed on his forehead. This creature and the story became the model for Shelley's classic tale, Frankenstein. Thank you for thinking out loud with me, Micah Halpern. Let's think out loud again next week on JBS.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support JBS, the Jewish Broadcasting Service, with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more, to the nonprofit organization Jewish Education in Media. Simply visit the JBS homepage and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check made out to Jem, Post Office Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.